His retired war dog started clawing behind the telegraph desk. Then they uncovered a murder hidden for 56 years. The snow came hard across the Bitterroot Mountains. The night former Navy SEAL Cole Ramsey parked beside an abandoned telegraph station nobody in Montana wanted anymore. Homeless, grieving, and nearly out of gas, Cole thought the $10 building would only keep him alive through winter. But when his retired military K9, Titan, began growling at the wall behind the operator's desk, they uncovered a hidden compartment tied to a missing railroad operator, stolen military cargo, and a secret powerful men had killed to protect. Comment 1 if you believe dogs can sense things humans can't, or if you think it was all coincidence. And tell us where you're watching from. The cold came down hard after midnight. Not the soft kind of winter cold people imagined when they thought about Montana postcards and Christmas movies. This was railroad cold, Bitterroot Mountain cold, the kind that crawled through cracked windows and old steel and settled into a man's bones like something alive. Cole Ramsey sat behind the wheel of his faded blue Ford pickup, with both hands wrapped around a paper cup of truck stop coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. The engine was off to save gas. Frost feathered the inside edges of the windshield. Outside, the parking lot lights buzzed weakly through drifting snow. Titan slept across the bench seat beside him. At least he had been sleeping. The German shepherd's ears twitched suddenly. Cole looked over. Titan lifted his slowly from the old army blanket, amber eyes opening toward the darkness beyond the windshield. A long freight horn echoed somewhere far away across the valley. The dog went still. Not alert exactly. Listening. Cole watched him carefully. "You hearin' ghosts again, buddy?" Titan didn't move. The distant train sound rolled through the mountains a second time, low and mournful beneath the wind. The dog stood up abruptly on the seat. That alone was unusual. Titan had once slept through mortar fire outside Kandahar. Cole remembered one night in Afghanistan when artillery shook the entire valley while Titan barely lifted his head from the dirt beside him. The dog had nerves carved from granite. Even after retirement, very little rattled him. But lately, trains did. Titan pressed one paw against the dashboard and stared into the snowy darkness. Cole followed his gaze toward the black horizon beyond the truck stop. Nothing there but blowing snow and the faint glow of rail signals somewhere in the distance. "You're all right," Cole said quietly. His own voice sounded strange these days, rusted from lack of use. The dog gave a low sound deep in his throat. Not a growl, more like unease. Cole leaned back against the cracked seat and rubbed tired fingers across his eyes. 60 years old. 28 years in naval special warfare. And somehow he had ended up sleeping in a truck behind a truck stop outside Missoula with a retired military dog and $32 in his wallet. Life had a dark sense of humor. Snow ticked softly against the windshield. The truck smelled faintly of wet wool, gun oil, coffee, and old leather. Titan's harness hung from a hook behind the seat beside Cole's heavy winter coat. The harness still carried faded military lettering from deployments overseas. US Navy K9 unit. The stitching was beginning to fray. Cole stared at it for a long moment. He remembered when the harness had been new. Back then, Titan had been young and lean and wild-eyed, a missile disguised as a dog. They had met at Coronado during advanced tactical handling certification. Titan had failed with 3 handlers before Cole. Too aggressive, the trainers had said. Too independent. But Cole had recognized something in the dog immediately. Not aggression. Intelligence. Calculation. The same thing commanders had once said about Cole himself. The two of them had bonded fast after that. Afghanistan, Syria, northern Iraq, mountain extractions, night raids, dust storms, gunfire, silence afterward. Titan had saved his life twice. Maybe 3 times. Hard to remember anymore. Some memories stayed sharp forever. Others dissolved around the edges, like old photographs left in sunlight. Cole took a slow sip of cold coffee. His chest tightened suddenly, not from the cold. That familiar pressure again. Grief came like weather now. Quiet one moment, crushing the next. He saw Claire's face for half a second, hospital light against pale skin, her hand weak in his, the oxygen monitor beeping softly beside the bed. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, gone in 9 months. The medical bills had arrived before the funeral flowers wilted. After that, everything collapsed slowly, and then all at once. The house in Idaho sold, savings gone, truck payments behind. Friends stopped calling after a while, because nobody knows what to say to a grieving man who stares too long at nothing, especially one trained for war, especially one who still woke up reaching for weapons that weren't there. Cole blinked hard and looked outside again. The train horn sounded one last time far off in the mountains. Titan remained standing, watching. What the hell's got into you? The dog's ears twitched. Then slowly, reluctantly, he lay back down. But he didn't sleep again. Neither did Cole. Morning came gray and brittle. The bitter roots rose dark against the pale winter sky west of the truck stop. Snow covered the pine ridges like ash. Tractor trailers rumbled in and out of the parking lot while diesel smoke drifted low across the frozen pavement. Cole stepped out of the truck and stretched slowly. Joints aching from another night folded into the cab. Titan jumped down beside him. The dog moved stiffly now in the mornings, age catching up at last. White fur had begun spreading around his muzzle during the past year. Still, he stayed close. Always close. Cole grabbed Titan's leash, and they crossed toward the truck stop diner through the freezing wind. Inside smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. Country music played softly from an old radio near the register. The waitress nodded at Cole with the familiar expression people reserved for men who looked permanently tired. "Morning, sweetheart," she said to Titan before pouring Cole fresh coffee. "You two survived the night?" "Barely." Titan settled beside the booth while Cole warmed his hands around the mug. 3 ranchers sat at the counter nearby arguing over snow forecasts and cattle prices. Cole barely listened at first. Then one of them laughed. "Hell, Earl, you couldn't pay me to sleep in that old telegraph station." Another man snorted. "That dump's still standing?" "Barely." "What telegraph station?" the third asked. "The old Black Hollow Depot, out past the abandoned rail line. Thought the county tried selling that thing years ago. They did. Nobody wants it." "How much they asking?" The rancher grinned into his coffee. $10 last I heard." The others laughed. Titan's head lifted instantly. Cole noticed it immediately. The dog turned toward the men at the counter. Focused, listening. Then the first rancher added casually, "Place gives me the creeps anyway. Damn dog I had years back, wouldn't even go near it." Titan stood up beside the booth. Cole frowned. "What is it?" The German shepherd stared toward the ranchers with rigid attention. Then one of them said the word again. "Telegraph." Titan's ears snapped forward. Every muscle in the dog's body tightened. Cole felt a strange chill move down his spine. The waitress noticed too. "Well now," she said softly. "Looks like your partner knows something." Cole studied Titan carefully. The dog wasn't afraid. He was alert, interested, like he'd just heard a distant signal nobody else could hear. The ranchers eventually left, boots scraping across the diner floor. Titan watched them go, then looked back at Cole, waiting. Cole leaned back slowly in the booth. "Don't tell me you want to see this place." Titan's tail thumped once against the floor. Outside, another freight horn echoed faintly somewhere beyond the snow-covered valley. And for the first time in nearly a year, Cole Ramsey felt something move beneath the numbness inside him. Not happiness, not hope, just curiosity, small, dangerous, alive. An hour later, he sat behind the wheel again while Titan stared out the windshield toward the western mountains. The road to Black Hollow disappeared into falling snow. Cole glanced at the gas gauge. Almost empty. $32 in his pocket. No home, no plan. Just a restless military dog reacting to the word telegraph, like it meant something important. Cole shook his head softly. "This is stupid," he muttered. Titan stared ahead. Cole started the engine anyway, and somewhere far beyond the mountains, Hidden beneath snow and silence and 60 years of forgotten history, something waited behind the desk of an abandoned telegraph station. Something that had not been touched in more than half a century. Something Titan somehow already knew was there. The road to Black Hollow climbed west through narrowing valleys, where the mountains pressed close against the highway like dark walls. Snow drifted across the asphalt in pale ribbons beneath the truck's headlights. Pines crowded the shoulders of the road, tall and black against the white slopes rising into the bitter roots. Cole drove with both hands tight on the wheel. Titan sat upright beside him the entire way, not sleeping, watching. Every few miles, the old dog lifted his head slightly whenever distant railroad tracks appeared beside the road, before vanishing again beneath snow and weeds. The farther west they traveled, the quieter the world became. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the color of cold steel. Black Hollow finally appeared beyond a bend in the valley like a forgotten place people had slowly stopped believing in. A few brick storefronts lined the main street beneath faded signs. Snow rested heavy on rooftops and porch awnings. Smoke curled from chimneys into the gray winter air. Old pickup trucks sat parked outside a feed store and a diner, with a flickering neon sign that read coffee 24 hours a day, whether the place was open or not. Cole drove slowly through town. Titan's ears stayed forward. The place reminded Cole of dozens of dying mountain towns he had passed through over the years, once built around railroads or logging or mines. Places where men used to arrive believing work would last forever. Then the work vanished. After that, the people slowly disappeared too. At the far end of town stood the county building. Small, square, brick darkened by decades of mountain winters. Cole parked beside a snowbank and shut off the engine. For a moment he simply sat there. His reflections stared back faintly from the windshield. Gray at the temples now, deep lines around the eyes. A face weathered by desert sun, grief, exhaustion, and too many years sleeping lightly. Titan nudged his elbow softly. "You sure about this?" Cole asked. The dog stared toward the county office door. Cole sighed. "Yeah, me neither." Inside, the building smelled like radiator heat and old paper. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A Christmas wreath still hung crookedly near the entrance, even though January was nearly over. Behind a wooden counter sat an elderly woman wearing silver reading glasses and a dark green cardigan sweater. Her white hair was pinned carefully behind her ears. She looked up from a stack of folders as Cole entered. Then her eyes moved to Titan. Something softened in her expression immediately. "Well now," she said quietly, "aren't you handsome?" Titan approached the counter slowly, not nervous, curious. The woman reached down carefully, letting the dog smell her hand before scratching gently behind his ears. "You military?" she asked Cole without looking up. "Retired Navy." Her gaze shifted toward Titan's harness hanging against his thick fur. Recognition flickered there. He served too. Cole nodded once. Explosives detection and tactical support. The woman studied Titan for another moment. "There's intelligence in his eyes," she murmured. "Old intelligence." Cole wasn't sure how to answer that. The woman straightened slightly. "I'm Margaret Vance, county records and property clerk." "Cole Ramsey. What can I help you with, Mr. Ramsey?" Cole hesitated. The whole thing suddenly sounded ridiculous out loud. Still, he said it anyway. "Heard there's an abandoned telegraph station outside town." Margaret became very still. Even Titan noticed. The dog's ears twitched instantly. For the first time since entering the office, the warmth in Margaret's expression faded into something quieter, more careful. "Most folks don't ask about that place anymore," she said softly. Cole shrugged. Truck stop conversation. Margaret removed her glasses slowly. "You looking to buy it? Depends." "On what?" Cole almost laughed. "Whether the roof leaks." That earned the smallest hint of a smile from her. She turned toward a filing cabinet behind the counter and pulled open one drawer. Old folders shifted beneath her hands. Outside, wind rattled softly against the windows. Finally, she withdrew a thin property file and placed it on the counter between them. Black Hollow, Telegraph Depot County, Parcel 14B. Cole opened the folder. Inside were several faded photographs. The building sat alone beside dead railroad tracks beneath towering pine-covered ridges. A narrow porch sagged beneath heavy snow. One telegraph pole still stood crooked beside the tracks, like the last survivor of another century. Something tightened strangely in Cole's chest. He couldn't explain why. Titan pressed closer against the counter. Margaret noticed. "So," she said quietly, "you really are interested." Cole studied the photograph again. "Why's nobody bought it?" Margaret looked toward the window for a moment before answering. "People around here don't much care for old places with stories attached to them." "What kind of stories?" "The kind that stay around after people stop talking." Cole looked up. Margaret met his eyes calmly. Then she slid a single sheet of paper toward him. "Purchase value, 10,000. Cole blinked. "You serious? It's been sitting on county inventory for nearly 30 years. She folded her hands carefully atop the counter. "Nobody wants the upkeep. Roof survived, though." Cole stared at the paper. $10. A lifetime of combat deployments. And somehow this was what remained. A $10 building at the edge of a dead rail line. He almost walked away right there. Almost. Then Titan suddenly gave a low sound deep in his throat. Not aggressive, insistent. The dog stared directly at the photograph. Margaret watched Titan carefully now. "He's reacting stronger than most people do." Cole nodded slowly. "He started acting strange last night after hearing train horns." Margaret's expression shifted again. A flicker of something harder to identify. Recognition, maybe. Or memory. She reached beneath the counter and removed an old iron key attached to a faded leather strap. The key was large and dark with age. "Heavy old lock on the front door," she said softly. Cole didn't take it yet. "What's the catch?" Margaret looked directly at him. "Some places wait a long time for the right person to walk through the door." Silence settled between them. Titan stared at the key. Cole finally reached out and took it. The cold iron felt strangely heavy in his palm. Margaret completed the paperwork quietly after that. $10 cash, no speeches, no sales pitch. Just signatures and old paper sliding across old wood. When they finished, she handed him a folded map. "Follow the north road out of town about 4 miles. You'll see the tracks first." Cole tucked the map into his jacket. "Appreciate it." Margaret nodded once. Then, just before he turned to leave, she said quietly, "My father used to work there." Cole paused. "At the station?" "Yes." Something in her voice stopped him. "He retired?" Margaret looked down briefly at the counter. "No," she said softly. "He disappeared." The room suddenly felt colder. Titan stared at her without moving. Margaret forced a faint smile afterward, as though regretting she'd spoken at all. "Safe drive, Mr. Ramsey." Cole nodded slowly. Then he and Titan stepped back into the falling snow. Dusk was settling over Black Hollow by the time they reached the old rail line. The tracks emerged beside the road beneath thick drifts and frozen weeds, stretching west into the mountains before disappearing into forest. And there, beyond the tracks, stood the telegraph station. Cole slowed the truck instinctively. The building looked exactly like the photograph. Maybe sadder. Weathered pine siding faded silver gray with age. Rust streaked the metal roof. Snow had gathered thick across the narrow porch. One shattered lantern still hung beside the front door. The entire station sat alone against the darkening wilderness, like something abandoned by time itself. Titan stood up immediately inside the truck. His breathing changed. Cole noticed it at once. Slow, focused. The dog stared hard through the windshield. "What is it, buddy?" Titan whined softly. Cole parked beside the tracks and shut off the engine. The valley fell silent around them. No traffic, no voices. Only wind moving through pine trees and the distant groan of old railroad steel shifting beneath cold. Cole stepped out first. Snow crunched beneath his boots. Titan jumped down beside him, and immediately began moving toward the station with surprising speed for an aging dog. "Easy," Cole called. But Titan was already climbing the porch steps. The dog stopped directly in front of the heavy oak door, waiting. Cole came up beside him and studied the old lock. Frost covered the iron hinges. He pulled Margaret's key from his pocket. For some reason, his pulse had started climbing. The key slid into the lock with a grinding metallic sound, then turned. The door opened inward slowly with a long wooden groan. Cold air spilled out, carrying the smell of dust, pine, rust, and decades of silence. The interior was dark except for weak gray light filtering through tall windows. Cole stepped inside carefully. Old telegraph wires hung along the walls. Dust covered everything. A long wooden counter stretched across one side of the room. Beyond it stood the operator's desk, heavy oak scarred by time. And the moment Titan crossed the threshold, the dog walked directly behind the desk, then stopped, completely still. Cole watched him carefully. Titan lowered his nose toward the wall behind the desk. One low growl rumbled in his chest, then another. The fur along his back slowly rose, and for the first time since Cole had known him, Titan looked afraid. The German shepherd stood rigid behind the operator's desk, staring at the wall as though something on the other side was breathing. Cole remained motionless near the doorway. Years in combat had taught him something simple about fear. Animals sensed danger long before men admitted it existed. The fading winter lights stretched across the telegraph station in pale gray bands. Dust drifted slowly through the cold air. Somewhere above them, wind groaned softly against the old roof. Titan let out another low growl, not aggressive, warning. Cole stepped carefully across the creaking floorboards. "All right," he said quietly. "Easy." Titan did not move. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the wall behind the desk. Cole studied it carefully now. The beadboard paneling looked ancient but solid. Faded green paint peeled in thin strips near the floor. Old telegraph wires disappeared into the wall beside a rusted metal junction box. Nothing unusual. At least nothing obvious. Still, the feeling inside the room had changed. The station no longer felt abandoned. It felt occupied by memory. Cole crouched beside Titan slowly. The dog's breathing had become shallow. Cole rested one hand gently against the thick fur along Titan's neck. "You smell something?" Titan's ears twitched. Then he pressed his nose toward the wall again. Cole leaned closer. Old wood, dust, cold iron, and beneath it something faintly metallic. Not fresh. Old, very old. He straightened slowly outside. Darkness thickened across the valley. The mountains beyond the windows had vanished into shadow. Cole looked around the station again. The place was bigger than it first appeared. A long public counter ran along one wall beneath cracked windows. Ancient telegraph forms still littered shelves behind the counter like forgotten leaves. Two rusted pot-bellied stoves stood silent at opposite ends of the room. The operator's desk sat beneath the north-facing window near the back. Everything revolved around that desk. Cole could feel it somehow. Titan suddenly backed away from the wall and turned toward him sharply. The movement startled Cole. The dog almost never startled. Then Titan walked directly to the front door and looked back. "You want to leave?" Titan stared at him. Cole understood the look immediately. The dog didn't want to leave. He wanted Cole alert, careful. A strange chill crept down Cole's spine. He stepped back outside onto the porch. The freezing air hit his face hard. Night had settled fully over Black Hollow. The abandoned rail tracks stretched silver beneath moonlight beyond the station. Pines swayed darkly against the mountainside. Somewhere far off, another train horn echoed through the valley. Titan emerged beside him immediately. This time the dog barked once toward the tracks, sharp, focused, then silence again. Cole looked west toward the mountains. Nothing moved, no lights, no cars, no people. Just wilderness and cold, and an old telegraph station sitting alone beside dead rails. He rubbed tired hands across his face. This was a mistake, he muttered. But he didn't believe it. Not completely. The truck still held enough blankets and supplies for another night. Cole decided to sleep there instead of inside the station, at least for now. Something about the building felt unsettled. Even Titan sensed it. An hour later, snow began falling again, heavy this time. Cole sat inside the cab with the heater running low, while Titan remained awake beside him, watching the station through the windshield. The telegraph station stood dark against the storm, like a stranded ship buried in snow. Cole opened a can of beef stew over a small travel stove, balanced carefully near the dashboard. Titan ate from an old military food bowl near the seat. Neither made much noise. The storm swallowed the valley slowly. By midnight, the world beyond the windshield had almost disappeared. Cole finally drifted asleep sometime after 1 in the morning. Then came the sound. Metal striking metal, sharp, rhythmic. Cole's eyes snapped open instantly. Titan was already standing. The dog faced the station, listening. The sound came again. Click, 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 click. Cole's pulse jumped. For half a second, his exhausted mind dragged him backward through time. Afghanistan. Night operations. Radio chatter. Metal weapons being loaded in darkness. His breathing tightened automatically. Titan pressed against his leg hard enough to ground him. The station sat barely visible through swirling snow. Another metallic sound drifted across the storm. Click, click. Cole stared toward the building. Telegraph sounds. The realization hit him slowly. Not random metal, a pattern. Morse rhythm. His chest tightened. Impossible. The station had no electricity, no active lines. Nothing connected to the outside world in decades. Titan whined low in his throat. Cole grabbed the flashlight from beneath the seat immediately. Stay. Titan ignored the command instantly and followed him anyway. Snow blasted across the parking area between the truck and station. Wind howled around the building hard enough to rattle the loose metal roofing overhead. Cole climbed the porch steps carefully. The front door had drifted partly open. He knew he had shut it. Titan moved ahead of him into the darkness. Cole swept the flashlight beam across the room. Dust, counter, stoves, empty chairs, nothing else. Then the metallic sound came again. Click. This time softer, from somewhere inside the walls. Titan moved directly behind the operator's desk. Cole followed. The flashlight beam landed across the old telegraph equipment sitting atop the desk. A brass key, a sounder, ancient relay hardware coated in dust, and slowly, the sounder arm twitched. Click. Cole froze. The tiny metal lever moved again weakly beneath the flashlight beam. Click, click. A shiver crawled across the back of his neck. The telegraph system was dead. Dead for decades. Yet somehow the sounder moved faintly every few seconds as wind screamed outside. Cole leaned closer carefully. Static crackled softly through the ancient wire lines. Wind. Just wind crossing broken circuits. That had to be it. Had to. Still, the rhythm bothered him. Because it wasn't random. Titan suddenly growled again. Cole swung the flashlight toward the wall. Nothing there. But the dog continued staring, focused, alert. The exact same expression Titan used before detecting explosives overseas. Cole's pulse climbed another notch. Then, the radio static sound changed. For half a second, the crackling sharpened into something clearer. A voice. Faint, broken. Almost impossible to hear beneath the storm. Cole jerked backward instinctively. The sound vanished immediately. Only wind again. His breathing had quickened now, pitsty. That's all this was. Exhaustion and old wiring and memory twisting together inside his head. He knew the signs: lack of sleep, isolation, hypervigilance. The mind started connecting ghosts to ordinary sounds. He turned away sharply and paced toward the front windows. Snow hammered the glass outside. Cole pressed trembling fingers against his forehead. Breathe in, out. The room around him suddenly blurred for half a second. Then came another flash. Afghanistan again. Snow this time. Mountain extraction mission near the Pakistani border. Radio failure during a storm. 3 SEALs trapped on a ridge waiting for evac. Cole remembered blood freezing black against white snow. Remembered gunfire. Remembered Titan dragging him behind rock cover after the explosion. The smell of smoke. The screaming. Cole shut his eyes hard. Titan pressed against his side immediately. Grounding him again. Always grounding him. Cole slowly crouched beside the dog. You still pulling me out of bad places, huh? Titan licked once against his wrist. Outside, the storm slowly weakened toward dawn. Cole stayed inside the station the rest of the night with a lantern burning near the desk. Neither he nor Titan slept much. At first light, he began exploring the building properly. The back storage room contained rusted filing cabinets and railroad crates covered in decades of dust. A calendar still hung crooked on one wall. October 1968. Cole stopped staring at it. The year Samuel Vance disappeared. Titan sniffed carefully around the room before returning once more to the operator's desk. Always back to the desk. Cole moved several old ledgers aside carefully. Beneath them sat a faded black and white photograph partly buried under dust. He picked it up. 3 railroad men stood outside the station smiling into bright summer sunlight sometime long ago. One held a telegraph clipboard. Another smoked a cigarette. The third man stood near the porch steps wearing a heavy field jacket. Cole's blood went cold. On the jacket sleeve, a military patch. Navy, not modern, older, but unmistakable. Cole stared harder. The same insignia his own old unit once carried overseas. Titan stood beside him silently. Cole flipped the photograph over slowly. Written in faded ink were 4 words. Samuel Vance. Summer 1967, and beneath that, Signalman First Class. Cole looked back toward the silent telegraph desk. Toward the wall, Titan still refused to leave alone. Outside, another freight horn echoed through the Bitterroot Valley. Long, lonely, and somewhere deep beneath the station floorboards, something unseen waited in the dark. The storm returned 2 nights later, not as snow this time, rain. Cold mountain rain driven sideways by violent wind rolling down through the Bitterroots. The old telegraph station groaned beneath it. Cole sat at the operator's desk with an oil lantern burning beside him, while Titan rested near the pot-bellied stove. Rain hammered the roof in uneven waves overhead. Every few seconds, the telegraph wires outside sang softly in the wind like distant voices stretched thin across the valley. The station smelled different now that it had warmed slightly. Old pine boards, dust, machine oil, and something else underneath. Something metallic. Cole had spent most of the day cleaning. Not because he planned on staying long. At least that's what he kept telling himself. But the truth sat quietly inside him while he worked. He hadn't felt useful in nearly a year. Not since Claire died. Not since the house disappeared. Not since the world had slowly narrowed down to truck stops and gas receipts and sleepless nights with Titan beside him. Cleaning the station gave his hands something to do, besides remember. He'd swept decades of dirt from the floorboards, cleared dead leaves from corners, uncovered faded railway schedules and telegraph forms stacked carefully beneath the counter. He'd even repaired one cracked window using plywood scavenged from an old shed behind the station. Simple work, steady work, the kind that quieted the mind. Titan, however, had not relaxed once. Every hour or so, the dog returned behind the operator's desk, watching the wall, listening. Cole finally set down the rag in his hands and leaned back in the old wooden chair. You gonna tell me what's in that wall? Titan lifted his head instantly. Then came the scratching. Sharp, sudden. The dog launched to his feet, so violently, the old chair beside the stove tipped sideways onto the floor. Cole stood immediately. Titan! The German Shepherd rushed behind the operator's desk and began clawing furiously at the wall paneling. Wood splintered beneath his paws. The sound echoed through the station. Cole hurried forward. Easy, but Titan wouldn't stop. The dog barked once, deep and explosive, and continued scratching harder. Panic, real panic. Cole had heard that sound only once before, Afghanistan. A hidden explosive device beneath a collapsed schoolhouse floor outside Kunduz. Titan had reacted exactly the same way moments before the detonation. Cole grabbed the dog by the harness instinctively. Titan fought against him with shocking strength. Not aggression toward Cole, urgency. The dog's claws scraped wildly across the faded green boards. Then suddenly, Titan yelped sharply. Cole froze. Blood streaked one paw, where a splintered nail had torn against the wood. The dog stumbled backward, breathing hard. Cole crouched immediately beside him. Damn it. Titan tried to pull toward the wall again despite the injured paw. Cole looked up slowly. Rain rattled against the windows. Wind moaned through the telegraph wires outside. And one section of wall behind the desk now showed deep claw marks where the paint had splintered away. Cole stood carefully. Titan whined low behind him. The scratched section looked slightly different from the surrounding boards. Not obvious, but enough. Cole ran his hand across the surface. One panel sat unevenly against the others. His pulse quickened. No way! He grabbed the heavy flashlight from the desk and examined the seams carefully. There, tiny gaps near the edges, almost invisible beneath decades of dust and paint. A hidden panel. Cole stared at it for a long moment, then looked back at Titan. The dog stood trembling slightly, despite the injured paw, waiting. Cole walked to his toolbox near the front counter and retrieved a flat pry bar. Thunder rolled across the mountains outside. Rain battered the roof harder now. He slid the edge of the pry bar carefully beneath the loosened seam. Old wood creaked. The panel resisted at first, then shifted suddenly with a dry, cracking sound. Dust exploded into the lantern light. Titan barked once sharply. Cole pulled the board loose. Behind it sat darkness, a narrow, hidden compartment built between the wall studs. The cavity was deeper than expected, about 3 feet high, 2 feet wide, carefully constructed, deliberately concealed. Cole raised the flashlight slowly. Inside rested several objects wrapped in oilcloth and stacked carefully against the back wall. Untouched, waiting. For over 50 years, Cole's heartbeat thudded heavily in his chest. Titan stared at the compartment without blinking. The dog's fear had vanished now. Replaced by intense focus, Cole reached inside carefully. The first object felt heavy beneath the cloth wrapping. He laid it gently across the desk and unfolded the material. A brass signal key emerged beneath the lantern light. Beautiful old. Western Union markings still visible beneath tarnish and dust. Beside it sat a telegraph sounder and relay unit connected by faded copper wire. Cole ran his fingers lightly across the brass, cold, perfectly preserved. Beneath the equipment rested a bundle of military maps tied with faded string. His stomach tightened. Military. Why would military maps be hidden inside a telegraph station wall? Titan moved closer beside him. Cole untied the string slowly. Several folded maps spread across the desk, rail routes, mountain terrain, old supply markings, and handwritten notes in black ink. Coordinates, dates, cargo schedules. Cole frowned harder. None of this looked ordinary. Then he uncovered the envelopes. 3 of them, yellowed with age. Unopened, the final item sat beneath everything else. A single folded telegram sheet stained dark along one edge. Cole picked it up carefully. The paper crackled softly between his fingers. A date was stamped near the top. November 18, 1968. His pulse quickened. The exact year Samuel Vance disappeared. Titan stared at the telegram. Cole unfolded it slowly. The typed message ended halfway down the page. Shipment never arrived. Stop. They killed him before dawn. Stop. Do not trust Sheriff Holloway. The sentence ended abruptly. No signature, no final transmission code, nothing else. Cole stared at the unfinished line while thunder shook the mountains outside. A cold heaviness settled slowly into the room. Someone had tried to send this message, and never finished. Titan suddenly turned toward the front windows and growled again. Cole looked up sharply. For half a second he thought he saw movement outside through the rain. A shadow crossing near the tracks, then nothing. Only darkness and storm. Cole stood motionless, listening. Rain hammered the roof. Water dripped somewhere near the back room. The telegraph sounder clicked faintly beside the brass key. Click, click, click. Cole looked back at the unfinished telegram. His military instincts had fully awakened now. Patterns, signals, hidden routes, secret shipments, corrupt officials. This was forgotten railroad story. Something dangerous had happened in Black Hollow decades ago, and somehow Titan had known exactly where to look. The dog limped closer beside him. Cole knelt slowly and examined the injured paw beneath the lantern light. Blood spotted the fur near one claw. Easy, buddy. Titan stayed perfectly still while Cole cleaned the wound with water from his canteen. The old dog never took his eyes off the hidden compartment. Cole wrapped the paw carefully using gauze from his field kit. You tore yourself up finding this thing. Titan leaned gently against him. Outside, the storm rolled deeper into the valley. Cole sat back slowly against the desk. The unfinished telegram remained open before him. Do not trust Sheriff Holloway. Sheriff. The word lingered heavily in his thoughts. Sheriff Warren Doyle had already warned him to stay out of Old Town business. And now here sat evidence hidden inside a wall for more than half a century, accusing law enforcement directly. Cole suddenly understood something important. This wasn't history to somebody. It was unfinished business. The lantern flickered as wind rattled the windows hard enough to shake the old glass. Titan lifted his head sharply toward the rear of the station. Another sound. Faint this time. A floorboard creaking somewhere beyond the storage room. Cole stood instantly. Every muscle in his body tightened. Titan growled low again. The station fell silent except for rain and wind. Then, one slow footstep echoed from somewhere in the darkness behind them. Cole turned instantly. Training took over before thought could catch up. His hand moved automatically beneath his jacket toward the old Sig Sauer, holstered at his waist. Titan planted himself between Cole and the rear storage room, teeth bared now, a deep warning growl vibrating through the station floorboards. The lantern flame flickered violently as thunder rolled overhead. Another creak, slow, measured. Somebody was back there. Cole grabbed the flashlight and moved sideways around the operator's desk, every muscle tight. Years vanished from his body in moments like this. The exhaustion, the grief, the homelessness. Gone. Only instinct remained. The station stretched ahead in shifting shadows. Old filing cabinets, broken shelves, dust drifting through lantern light. Rainwater tapped steadily against the windows. Titan advanced one careful step at a time beside him. Cole swept the flashlight beam across the back room. Nothing. Just darkness and abandoned railroad junk. Then the beam landed on movement near the rear wall. Cole raised the pistol instantly, but it wasn't a man. A loose ceiling panel swung slowly overhead in the storm wind leaking through the roof. Creak. Back and forth. Cole exhaled hard through his nose. Titan relaxed slightly, though not fully. The old dog still stared into the corners of the station, as if something invisible remained there. Cole lowered the weapon slowly. Damn place is getting in our heads. Titan's ears twitched. Cole holstered the pistol again and scanned the room more carefully. That was when he noticed the back window. Open 2 inches. He frowned. He was certain it had been shut earlier. Cold rain blew through the gap onto the floorboards beneath it. Cole crossed carefully and pulled the window closed tight. For a brief second, he thought he saw headlights far beyond the trees outside. Then darkness swallowed them. Maybe imagination, maybe not. By the time dawn arrived, neither Cole nor Titan had slept. The storm finally passed near sunrise, leaving the valley buried beneath fresh snow and low drifting fog. The mountains looked enormous in the early light, pale blue beneath the clouds. Cole sat at the operator's desk, staring at the unfinished telegram again. Do not trust Sheriff Holloway. He kept replaying the words in his head. The current sheriff's name was Doyle, not Holloway, meaning the message pointed towards somebody long dead. Or somebody connected. Titan rested beside the stove now, injured paw wrapped carefully in fresh gauze. Even lying down, the dog kept glancing toward the hidden compartment every few minutes. Cole folded the telegram carefully and slid it back into the oilcloth bundle. Then he looked toward the faded photograph again. Samuel Vance, signalman first class, Navy. The same insignia as Cole's old unit. The coincidence bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Outside, morning light slowly awakened Black Hollow. Cole decided he needed answers. An hour later, the truck rolled back into town through slushy snow, while Titan watched silently from the passenger seat. Black Hollow looked different in daylight, smaller somehow. The kind of place where people noticed strangers immediately and remembered them for years afterward. Cole parked outside a diner near the center of town. Inside, the smell of bacon grease and coffee wrapped around him the moment he stepped through the door. Conversations quieted briefly. People noticed Titan first, then Cole. Mountain towns always measured newcomers carefully. A waitress in her 50s pointed toward a booth near the back. "Coffee's fresh." Cole nodded gratefully. Titan settled beside the booth, while Cole wrapped cold hands around a steaming mug. An old radio behind the counter crackled with weather reports, warning about more snow moving through the Bitterroots later in the week. At the far end of the diner sat Sheriff Warren Doyle. Cole recognized him immediately from the badge and heavy winter coat hanging beside the stool. The sheriff was broad-shouldered, late 60s maybe, with a weathered rancher's face and pale gray eyes that seemed permanently narrowed against disappointment. Doyle noticed Cole almost immediately. His gaze dropped briefly toward Titan, then lingered. The sheriff rose slowly and crossed the diner. Every conversation nearby softened. People watched without pretending not to. "You settle into the station?" Doyle asked. His tone stayed calm, too calm. Cole nodded once, trying to. Doyle glanced toward Titan again. "He military? Retired. Looks well-trained." "He is." Silence stretched briefly between them. Then Doyle pulled out the chair across from Cole and sat without asking. "You find anything interesting out there?" The question came too quickly. Cole studied him carefully. The sheriff's expression never changed. Cole took a sip of coffee before answering. "Mostly dust." Doyle nodded slowly. "That building's got history attached to it." He leaned back slightly. "Sometimes folks get curious about old stories around here. Usually better to leave old stories buried." Titan lifted his head beneath the table. Cole noticed immediately. The dog stared directly at Doyle now. Focused, the sheriff noticed too. "He doesn't like me much. He doesn't like many people." Doyle smiled faintly at that, but the smile never reached his eyes. "You a drifter, mister?" "Ramsey?" The question carried weight beneath it. Cole answered honestly. "Something like that." Doyle studied him for another long moment. Then his gaze drifted briefly toward the scars on Cole's hands. Military recognized military. Even between men who disliked each other. "You serve overseas?" "Long time ago." Doyle nodded once. "My brother was Army. Vietnam." Cole said nothing. The sheriff finally stood. "Well," he said quietly. "You need anything in town, folks around here generally help neighbors." He paused briefly. "Long as neighbors mind their business." Then he walked away. Titan continued staring after him until the sheriff disappeared through the diner door. Cole sat motionless. Something cold settled low in his stomach. The sheriff knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough outside. Wind pushed snow in thin spirals across the street. Cole finished his coffee in silence before driving toward the county office. Margaret Vance looked unsurprised to see him. "You found something," she said quietly, the moment he entered. Titan limped beside him toward her desk. Cole placed the faded photograph carefully on the counter. Margaret's breath caught softly. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked it up. For several seconds, she simply stared at the image. "My father," she whispered. Cole waited. Margaret sat down slowly behind the desk. The room had gone very quiet. "He disappeared in November of 1968, she said at last. "I was 14 years old." Cole leaned against the counter. "What happened?" Margaret gave a faint, bitter smile. "That depends who you asked." She removed her glasses slowly. The official story was that Samuel Vance walked out on Black Hollow and never came back. Left his job, left me, Left everything, but you didn't believe it. No, the word came instantly, without hesitation. Margaret looked toward the window, where snow drifted past the courthouse lawn. My father loved that station more than anything in the world, except my mother and me. Her voice softened with memory. He'd served in Korea before coming home. Didn't talk much about the war, but the telegraph station gave him structure again, routine, purpose. Cole understood that immediately, more than she realized. Margaret folded her hands carefully together. The night he vanished, there was a storm, not unlike the one 2 nights ago. She looked back toward Cole. Sheriff Holloway searched the station afterward. Said Samuel must have run off. Cole felt his pulse slow. Holloway. The name from the unfinished telegram. Sheriff Holloway, he repeated quietly. Margaret's eyes sharpened instantly. Why? Cole hesitated. Then carefully withdrew the unfinished telegram from his jacket. Margaret stared at it. The color drained slowly from her face. Oh my God. Her fingers shook as she touched the paper. He hid this. Cole nodded. Margaret looked up at him with tears gathering in her eyes now. For 56 years, she whispered. He knew something was wrong. Titan moved closer beside her quietly. Margaret rested trembling fingers against the old dog's neck. Your partner found this? He knew where the compartment was before I did. Margaret stared at Titan in amazement. Then something inside her expression shifted suddenly. Recognition. Not of the dog, of memory. My father used to say, animals hear things people stop listening to. Cole felt another chill. Margaret looked toward the courthouse door instinctively before lowering her voice. You need to be careful now. Why? Because if Sheriff Holloway really was involved, she swallowed hard. Then some people in Black Hollow spent a long time protecting that secret. Outside, a freight horn echoed faintly through the mountains. Titan lifted his head sharply toward the sound, and somewhere far beyond the snowy valley, hidden beneath decades of silence and fear, the past had finally started moving again. The wind sharpened by evening. Black Hollow disappeared early beneath gathering storm clouds rolling over the Bitterroots like dark smoke. Snow from the previous storm still covered the rail yards and rooftops, but now freezing rain tapped softly against windows all across town. Cole drove back toward the telegraph station, with the headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the gray dusk. Titan sat upright beside him, alert again. Ever since Margaret Vance had touched the unfinished telegram, something inside the old dog had changed. His focus had become constant, intense, like he understood they had crossed some invisible line. Cole kept replaying Margaret's words in his head. Some people in Black Hollow spent a long time protecting that secret. He glanced toward Titan. You ever get the feeling we should have kept driving west? Titan stared ahead silently. The station appeared through the trees moments later, dark, lonely, waiting beside the dead railroad tracks. Cole parked near the porch and shut off the engine. For a long moment, neither he nor Titan moved. The station no longer felt like abandoned property. It felt like evidence. Inside, the lantern light cast long shadows across the walls, while freezing rain rattled softly against the windows. Cole added wood to the pot-bellied stove and spread Samuel Vance's maps carefully across the operator's desk again. Titan settled near the door, though his ears stayed upright. Cole studied the documents one by one. Old military cargo manifests, rail schedules, supply transfer codes. Most dated between 1966 and 1968. Some carried military markings partially scratched away. Others included handwritten coordinates running north through the mountains. Nothing about it made sense. Why would stolen military shipment records be hidden inside a telegraph station? And why would a railroad operator risk his life over them? Cole leaned closer over one map. Several rail routes had been circled in black ink. One line ran directly through Black Hollow. Another note beside it read, "Transfer moved off books after Sheridan Crossing." Cole frowned harder. Off books, unofficial movement. His military instincts stirred immediately. He had seen similar operations overseas during covert transport missions. Hidden cargo rerouted through secondary channels so nobody asked questions. But this was Montana, not a war zone. A sudden knock exploded against the station door. Titan sprang upright instantly with a deep growl. Cole's hand moved beneath his jacket automatically. Another knock came. Harder this time. Cole approached slowly. "Who is it?" A woman's voice answered through the storm. "Sorry to bother you." Cole opened the door carefully. A woman stood beneath the porch lantern, holding the collar of her coat against the freezing rain. Mid-30s maybe. Wind-blown dark hair, tired eyes. Behind her, an old ranch truck idled near the tracks. Beside the truck stood a young boy, bundled in a heavy winter coat. Titan stopped growling immediately. Interesting. The woman noticed the dog first. "Well," she said softly, "guess that answers whether you're the veteran staying out here." Cole kept one hand near his jacket. "Can I help you?" She lifted a paper grocery sack slightly. "Margaret Vance said you probably haven't eaten anything decent since arriving in town." Cole blinked once. Unexpected kindness always hit harder after long isolation. The woman offered a faint smile. "I'm Emily Mercer." She nodded toward the boy outside. "My son Noah." The boy waved awkwardly from the truck. Cole stepped aside slowly. "You'd better come in before the weather gets worse." Emily entered carefully, taking in the station with visible surprise. "My God," she whispered. "I haven't been inside this place since I was little." Titan approached her cautiously. Emily knelt slightly and let the dog sniff her hand. "Well, hey there, handsome." Titan relaxed almost immediately. That told Cole plenty. Dogs trusted honesty faster than people did. Noah entered next, small and quiet beneath his oversized coat. Maybe 10 years old, thin, watchful. The kind of child who listened more than he spoke. The boy froze the moment he saw the telegraph equipment. His eyes widened. "What is this place?" "A telegraph station," Cole answered. Noah stepped closer slowly. "Like Morse code?" Cole looked at him with mild surprise. "You know Morse?" "Little bit," Noah shrugged shyly. "I like old radios." Emily laughed softly. "He's obsessed with signal stuff. Ham radios, weather frequencies, anything that makes noise." Titan walked directly to Noah and sat beside him. The boy smiled immediately. Cole hadn't seen Titan approach anyone that gently in months. Emily unpacked sandwiches and thermoses from the grocery sack, while rain hammered harder outside. "You don't have to do this," Cole said quietly. "Yes, I do," she answered simply. Something in her tone carried its own loneliness. Widowed, maybe, or abandoned. Mountain towns carried a lot of silent grief. For a while they ate quietly near the stove, while Noah wandered carefully around the station, studying everything with fascinated eyes. Then Emily looked toward the maps spread across the desk. Her expression changed slightly. "Those old rail routes?" Cole nodded. "Found them hidden inside the wall." Emily grew still. "In the station?" Cole watched her carefully now. "You know something about them?" Emily hesitated, then slowly sat down near the stove. "My grandfather used to talk about freight trains moving through Black Hollow late at night back in the 60s. Her voice lowered. He said some of the shipments didn't make sense. Military crates arriving nowhere near military bases. Cole leaned back slightly. What kind of crates? He never knew. Emily stared toward the rain-dark windows. But people around here learned not to ask questions back then. Why? Because the men running those shipments owned half the valley. The room fell quiet. Even Noah stopped moving. Emily continued softly. Rail contractors, ranch owners, local politicians. Sheriff Holloway protected all of them. Titan suddenly lifted his head toward the windows. Cole noticed instantly. "What is it?" The dog stood slowly, growling low, focused. Then headlights swept briefly across the front windows. A vehicle outside. Cole rose immediately. The headlights vanished just as quickly. Engine noise faded down the road. Emily looked nervous now. "You have enemies already?" Cole gave a humorless smile. "Wouldn't be the first time." Titan remained near the windows, watching. Cole walked onto the porch carefully. Cold rain soaked instantly through his jacket. The road beyond the tracks sat empty. No headlights now, no engine, nothing. But fresh tire tracks cut sharply through the mud near the station. Someone had been watching. He returned inside slowly. Emily looked toward the hidden compartment behind the desk. Margaret told me about the telegram. Cole studied her carefully. She trusts you, Emily nodded. She also trusts Titan. The old dog finally relaxed slightly and returned toward the stove. Noah crouched beside him carefully. He's got scars, the boy whispered. Titan's ears twitched. Cole looked over. Afghanistan. Noah traced one finger carefully near the thick scar along Titan's shoulder. Did he save people? Cole stared into the stove fire for a long moment before answering. More than once. Silence settled warmly around them after that. Outside, darkness deepened fully across the mountains. Then suddenly, the first gunshot shattered the front window. Glass exploded inward. Emily screamed. Titan launched toward Cole instantly. A second shot slammed into the wall above the operator's desk. Wood splintered everywhere. Down, Cole roared. Years of combat returned in a heartbeat. He shoved Emily and Noah behind the heavy counter while Titan positioned himself low near the broken window, snarling violently. Another shot tore through the lantern hanging beside the door. Darkness swallowed half the station instantly. Cole drew the Sig Sauer and dropped behind the desk. Rain blasted through shattered glass. Outside, engine noise roared briefly beyond the tracks, then faded fast into the storm, gone. Silence crashed down afterward except for Emily's frightened breathing and Titan's deep growl near the window. Cole stayed motionless for several seconds, listening. No movement outside now, no voices, only rain and thunder. Titan limped back toward him slowly. Cole checked the dog immediately. No blood, thank God. Noah stared wide-eyed from behind the counter. Why would someone shoot at us? Cole looked toward the shattered window, then toward the unfinished telegram lying open atop the desk, because somebody in Black Hollow had just realized the hidden compartment was no longer hidden, and whoever controlled the secret before was willing to kill to keep it buried. Rain poured through the shattered station window in cold silver sheets, while the old telegraph wires screamed softly in the wind outside. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Emily held Noah tightly behind the counter. Titan stood rigid near the broken glass, teeth bared toward the darkness beyond the tracks. Cole remained crouched behind the operator's desk with the pistol steady in both hands, waiting, listening. The years fell away from him completely in moments like this. Combat had its own kind of silence after violence, a terrible silence, the kind where every breath sounded too loud. Finally, the distant engine noise disappeared into the storm, gone. Whoever fired the shots knew the valley roads well. Cole lowered the weapon slowly. They're not coming back tonight. Emily looked pale. You sure? No. Cole glanced toward the broken window. But if they wanted us dead, they would've stayed. That truth settled heavily inside the room. The gunfire hadn't been meant to kill. It had been a warning. Titan continued growling toward the darkness. Cole approached the dog carefully. Easy. Titan's ears twitched, but he didn't calm immediately. Cole crouched beside him and gently rested one hand against the dog's neck. Only then did the growling slowly stop. Noah stared at Titan wide-eyed. He knew they were out there before the shots. Cole nodded once. He usually does. Outside, thunder rolled through the mountains again. Emily stood shakily and looked around the damaged station. Broken glass glittered across the floorboards. Rainwater pooled beneath the windows. One bullet hole sat buried in the wall, inches above Samuel Vance's hidden compartment. Close. Too close. Emily swallowed hard. You need to call the sheriff. Cole looked at her. Then toward the unfinished telegram still lying open across the desk. Do not trust Sheriff Holloway. He folded the paper slowly. No, he said quietly. I don't. Emily understood immediately. Fear moved through her expression then. Not panic. Recognition. The kind people carried it in small towns when old stories suddenly became real again. Noah stepped carefully toward the operator's desk. "Who shot at us?" Cole hesitated, then answered honestly. "People who don't want certain things found." The boy looked toward the hidden compartment. Titan limped beside him protectively. Emily rubbed both hands together against the cold. "You can't stay out here alone anymore." Cole almost smiled at that. Alone. He'd been alone for so long the word barely meant anything anymore. But tonight felt different. Tonight the station no longer belonged only to him and Titan. Now other people were inside the story too, and that made things dangerous. The storm worsened near midnight. Emily and Noah couldn't safely drive the mountain roads back to their ranch in the freezing rain, so they stayed. Cole repaired the shattered window temporarily with plywood and old railroad tarps scavenged from the storage room, while Titan followed him closely despite the injured paw. The old dog refused to let Cole out of sight now. Every few minutes, Titan stopped working to sniff carefully near the floorboards or stare toward the rear of the station. Listening. Always listening. By 1 in the morning, the station had settled into uneasy quiet. Emily and Noah slept beneath wool blankets near the stove. Cole sat alone at the operator's desk with Titan beside him. The lantern burned low. Rain tapped steadily against the roof overhead. Cole unfolded Samuel Vance's military maps again. The more he studied them, the clearer the pattern became. Cargo shipments, transfer routes, hidden schedules, and repeated markings near Black Hollow between 1967 and 1968. Somebody had been moving military equipment illegally through the mountains. Large amounts of it. Cole rubbed tired hands across his face. His chest had begun tightening again hours earlier. Not fear. Something worse. The old familiar pressure behind his ribs that came before flashbacks. He recognized the warning signs immediately. Lack of sleep, adrenaline, storm noise, gunfire. Too many old memories waking up at once. Titan looked up at him instantly. The dog always knew first. Cole leaned back slowly in the chair. "Not tonight," he muttered to himself. But the memories came anyway. Afghanistan. Snow-covered ridges, rotor blades echoing through mountain darkness. Cole remembered the mission near Jalalabad better than most. Not because of the firefight. Because of what happened after. A failed extraction. 3 SEALs trapped beneath collapsed stone after an explosion ripped through the ridge path. Communications gone. Visibility almost zero in the snowstorm. Cole had been buried halfway beneath rock debris, with blood freezing against his neck. He remembered hearing screaming through static. Remembered trying to move and failing. And through all of it, Titan, the dog digging through rubble desperately to reach him. Cole shut his eyes tightly now. The station blurred around him. The smell of old pine suddenly transformed into dust and smoke and blood. His breathing quickened. Not here, not now. The lantern light flickered violently. Cole's hands trembled. Titan stood instantly. The old dog pressed hard against Cole's leg. Grounding pressure. Training. Years of military conditioning between handler and K9. Cole opened his eyes again slowly. The station returned piece by piece around him. Rain, lantern, telegraph desk, Titan, safe. The dog whined softly and pushed closer. Cole rested both hands against the thick fur around Titan's neck. "You always drag me back," he whispered. Titan licked once against his wrist. The old dog's muzzle had gone gray over the years. Scars marked both shoulders from deployments overseas. One ear remained partially torn from a mission Cole never talked about anymore. But the eyes stayed the same, steady, faithful, certain. Cole leaned his forehead briefly against Titan's. Outside, another freight horn echoed faintly across the valley. Titan's ears twitched sharply. Then suddenly the dog pulled away, fast. Cole looked up immediately. Titan limped toward the rear of the station, focused again. The dog stopped near the pot-bellied stove, growling softly. Cole stood slowly. "What is it?" Titan lowered his nose to the floorboards beside the stove, then scratched once. Cole moved closer with the lantern. The boards beneath the stove looked older than the surrounding floor. Darker wood, slightly uneven. Titan scratched again, more urgently. Cole crouched carefully and examined the edges. There, a narrow iron ring hidden beneath dust beside one plank. His pulse quickened. "No way," Titan barked once sharply. Emily woke immediately near the stove. "What's wrong?" Cole gripped the iron ring carefully and pulled. The floorboard lifted with a deep wooden groan. Cold air rushed upward from beneath the station. A hidden opening. Darkness stretched below. Noah sat upright instantly beneath his blanket. "What is that?" Cole raised the lantern slowly over the hole. Wooden steps disappeared downward into blackness beneath the station floor. An underground space. Titan stared into the opening without blinking. The old dog's entire body had gone rigid again. But this time the fear felt different. Not warning, recognition. Like he'd found the scent he'd been chasing since arriving in Black Hollow. Emily approached carefully beside Cole. "Oh my God." Cold air drifted upward, carrying the smell of damp concrete, rust, and something older. Something buried. Titan let out a low whine deep in his throat. Then, slowly, the dog started descending into the darkness beneath the station. Titan moved carefully, despite the injured paw, one step at a time, down the narrow wooden staircase, disappearing below the floorboards. Cole grabbed the lantern immediately. "Titan." The dog didn't stop. Cold air drifted upward from beneath the station, carrying the smell of wet earth, rust, mildew, and something faintly chemical underneath it all. Something old. Emily stood frozen beside the stove with one arm around Noah. "You're not seriously going down there?" Cole looked toward the darkness below. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am." Titan barked once from somewhere beneath them, impatient, waiting. Cole checked the pistol at his waist automatically before lifting the lantern higher. "Stay up here," he told Emily. "No chance." Cole glanced at her. Emily's face had gone pale, but there was steel beneath the fear now. "My grandfather worked these rail lines too," she said softly. "If something happened in this station, I want to know." Noah stepped closer before either adult could stop him. "I'm coming too." "No," both of them said instantly. The boy folded his arms stubbornly. Titan barked again below. Cole exhaled slowly. "You stay right behind us," he finally said. "And you listen to every word I say." Noah nodded immediately. The staircase creaked beneath their weight as they descended. The lantern light revealed rough stone walls, damp with condensation. Old support beams crossed overhead, blackened with age and moisture. The deeper they moved beneath the station, the colder the air became. Titan waited at the bottom. The dog stood perfectly still, facing deeper into the underground chamber. Cole reached the floor first. Concrete. Old railroad concrete poured decades earlier. The hidden room stretched farther beneath the station than he expected. A maintenance cellar, maybe 30 feet long. The ceiling hung low enough that Cole had to duck slightly beneath several support beams. Rusted pipes ran along the walls beside bundles of dead electrical wire. Water dripped steadily somewhere deeper inside. Then the lantern light found the crates. Military crates, stacked against the far wall beneath heavy tarps rotted nearly black with age. Emily sucked in a breath behind him. "Oh my God." Titan moved slowly toward the crates. Cole followed carefully. The nearest wooden box still carried faded military stenciling beneath layers of grime. Property of U.S. Army Signal Corps. Another crate showed rusted shipping labels partially peeled away. Cole crouched beside one and brushed away dust carefully. The date stopped him cold. Noah stared wide-eyed around the room. "It's like a bunker." In some ways it was. Cole swept the lantern slowly across the chamber. More crates emerged from darkness, dozens. Some broken open long ago, others sealed. Then the light reached the far concrete wall. Dark stains streaked downward across the surface, brown-black even after all these years. Emily saw them too. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Blood." The room fell silent except for dripping water. Titan approached the stained wall carefully, then stopped. The dog lowered his nose toward the floor. whined softly. Cole felt a heaviness settle inside his chest. This wasn't smuggling anymore. Somebody died down here. Maybe more than one somebody. He moved farther along the wall. A small wooden desk sat overturned near the back corner, buried beneath debris. Old papers littered the floor around it, damp and stuck together with time. Titan nudged something beneath the desk gently with his nose. A leather journal. Cole picked it up carefully. The cover cracked softly beneath his fingers. Samuel Vance. The name was written inside the front page in faded ink. Emily stepped beside him. That's his. Cole opened the journal slowly beneath the lantern light. Most pages contained rail schedules and signal notes written in careful handwriting. Then the entries changed. October 3, 1968, shipment arrived after midnight. Army markings removed before unloading. Holloway present again. Men armed this time. Cole's jaw tightened. He turned pages. October 14, 1968, freight moved north through Sheridan route. They say nobody checks mountain lines anymore. They think silence means safety. Another page. October 29, 1968, I should have reported this weeks ago. But to who? Holloway owns half the county deputies, and the railroad men answer to the contractors. Emily covered her mouth softly. Cole kept reading. November 11, 1968, heard them arguing tonight. Something about a missing shipment. One man threatened to bury the problem under the tracks if necessary. The lantern crackled softly. Titan remained motionless near the stained wall. Cole turned another page. November 18, 1968, storm tonight. They moved another load beneath the station after midnight. I heard Holloway tell Keller they may have to clean the line before winter. Cole's pulse quickened. The final entry covered only half the page. November 18, 1968, 2:10 a.m. If anyone finds this, they were right about me listening too closely. I tried sending the warning through Butte before the lines were cut. If I do not leave this station alive, someone must know they used the rail system to move military cargo illegally for years. Holloway and the contractors control all of it now. I hear footsteps outside. Someone is coming through the storm. The entry ended there. No signature, no final line. Only empty space beneath the last sentence. The room seemed to grow colder around them. Noah stared at the journal quietly. So he died here. Cole looked slowly toward the blood-stained wall. Probably. Titan suddenly growled again, low, focused. The dog moved farther into the cellar, towards a section of concrete, partly hidden beneath collapsed shelving. Cole followed. Titan sniffed carefully near the floor, then scratched once. The lantern light caught something metallic buried beneath debris. Cole knelt carefully and pulled away broken wood. A railroad switch key emerged from the dust, and beside it a human watch. Rust covered most of it now, but the cracked face still showed frozen hands stopped at 2:17. Emily stared at the watch. My mother gave that to Samuel. Her voice broke. The cellar fell silent. Cole looked around slowly. The hidden room suddenly felt smaller, claustrophobic, heavy with unfinished fear. Titan limped farther along the wall, then stopped again. This time the dog pressed his nose directly against the concrete itself, whining softly. Cole approached carefully. The wall here looked newer than the surrounding stone. Different texture, different color. Concrete poured over something. His stomach tightened immediately. Emily saw it too. No, Cole raised the lantern closer. Hairline cracks stretched through the surface, and near the bottom, something pale protruded faintly beneath broken concrete. Noah stepped backward instantly. Emily covered her mouth again. Cole crouched slowly. For one terrible second he already knew. Titan whined harder now. The dog sat beside the wall and looked directly at Cole, waiting. Cole reached forward carefully and brushed away loose debris. Bone, human bone. The air seemed to leave the room all at once. Emily staggered backward against the desk. Oh God. Titan lowered his head quietly beside the wall. Cole stared at the concrete in silence. Samuel Vance had never left Black Hollow. He had died beneath the telegraph station, while a storm raged overhead, and someone had buried him inside the walls afterward. Cole rose slowly. The old combat calm had returned to his face now. Controlled, cold, dangerous. Because this was no longer a mystery. It was murder. And somewhere above them, in the sleeping mountain town, the families connected to it were still alive. Then suddenly, Titan's ears snapped upward sharply. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Directly overhead inside the station. Someone had entered the building above them. Titan spun instantly toward the staircase, every muscle rigid. Cole extinguished the lantern with one sharp breath. Darkness swallowed the cellar. Emily grabbed Noah against her instinctively. Above them, floorboards creaked slowly beneath heavy boots. One pair, then another. Cole's breathing slowed automatically. Combat calm, the old part of him waking completely now. He crouched beside Titan and whispered softly, "Stay close." The dog's growl vibrated through the darkness. Rain had stopped outside sometime during the night. In its place came something worse. Wind. Heavy mountain wind. And beneath it, the deep, distant howl of an approaching blizzard rolling down through the bitterroots. The footsteps above paused. A flashlight beam suddenly sliced through the cracks between floorboards overhead. Searching, Cole pulled Emily and Noah farther behind the stacked military crates. The hidden cellar smelled of wet concrete and old blood. Titan remained fixed on the staircase. Then came a voice from above, male, older. "Somebody's been digging." Cole recognized it immediately. Sheriff Warren Doyle. Another man answered. "You think they found it?" Silence, then Doyle again. "We're about 50 years too late for hoping." Cole felt Emily tense beside him. Noah stared wide-eyed into the darkness. The sheriff's footsteps moved slowly across the station overhead. Wood creaked directly above Samuel's hidden compartment. Then another sound, metal drawers opening. The men were searching. Cole's pulse stayed steady. His mind already mapped the room automatically. One staircase, limited cover, no safe exit except through the station above. Titan pressed closer against his leg. The dog understood tension better than most soldiers ever had. Doyle's voice drifted down again. "If Ramsey found those records, we've got a problem." The second man cursed quietly. "You should have handled him days ago." Cole's jaw tightened. Handled him. Titan's ears flattened instantly at the tone. Above them, furniture scraped loudly across floorboards. The sheriff was moving the operator's desk, looking for the hidden compartment. Emily leaned close enough for Cole to hear her whisper. "What do we do?" Cole thought quickly. If Doyle found Samuel's remains below the station, there would be no walking away from this. The sheriff knew that too. Another flashlight beam swept through cracks overhead. Then came the sound of wood splintering. They had found the compartment. Doyle muttered something too low to hear clearly. Then silence. Long silence. Finally, the second man spoke again. "It's gone." Cole could almost picture Doyle's face above them. Cold, calculating. "Dangerous," the sheriff answered quietly. "That means Ramsey knows." The blizzard struck the station moments later. Wind slammed against the building hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling beams. Snow blasted against windows like thrown gravel. Somewhere above them, loose metal roofing shrieked in the storm. The mountain weather had arrived fast, too fast for safe travel. Doyle cursed again upstairs. "Roads'll close before sunrise." The second man sounded nervous now. "We shouldn't stay here. No choice." Cole exchanged a look with Emily. The storm had trapped everyone. Hunter and hunted beneath the same roof. Titan suddenly stiffened beside the stairs. Cole heard it half a second later. The sheriff approaching the trapdoor. Slow, careful. A flashlight beam appeared at the edges of the floor opening overhead. Cole raised the pistol silently. Titan crouched low, ready. The trapdoor lifted slightly. Cold white light spilled downward through blowing snow. Doyle stared into the darkness beneath the station. For one terrible second, Cole thought the sheriff saw them immediately. But the cellar remained mostly hidden behind stacked crates and shadow. Doyle swept the flashlight slowly downward. The beam drifted across concrete, rust, pipes. Then closer, closer. Titan trembled beside Cole now, not fear. Control, the dog waited for command. Cole lowered one hand against Titan's shoulder gently. Not yet. The flashlight beam moved across the blood-stained wall, paused, then stopped completely near the cracked concrete where Samuel's remains lay hidden. Doyle inhaled sharply. "Oh, Christ!" The second man appeared above him. "What?" Doyle's voice had changed. Shaken now, he found him. The man above cursed loudly. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Doyle whispered something unexpected. "So many damn years." Cole frowned slightly, regret. There had been regret in the sheriff's voice. Small, buried deep, but real. The second man grabbed Doyle's shoulder roughly. "We need to burn this place down." Emily gasped softly before covering her mouth. Titan's growl deepened instantly. Doyle shook his head hard. "No. You got a better idea? We take the records and wait till morning." The second man looked furious. "And Ramsey?" Silence. Long silence. Finally, Doyle answered quietly. "He's a veteran with a military dog in a snowstorm." He glanced down into the cellar darkness again. "He's already suffered enough." The words surprised Cole more than they should have. The second man spat onto the floorboards. "You're getting soft." "No," Doyle said coldly. "I'm getting old." Then the trapdoor slammed shut above them. Darkness returned completely. Footsteps retreated across the station overhead. Cole waited motionless, several more minutes. Only when Titan relaxed slightly did he lower the pistol. Emily exhaled shakily. "He knows you're here." Cole nodded. "Yeah." Noah stared upward toward the ceiling. "He doesn't sound like he wants to hurt you." Cole thought about that, the sheriff's voice, the hesitation, the regret. This story was bigger than simple corruption now, much bigger. Then suddenly Titan stood again. The dog limped toward the crates near the rear wall, focused. Cole followed carefully with the lantern relit low. Titan sniffed along the concrete floor near an overturned metal cabinet, then barked once sharply. Cole pulled the cabinet aside. Behind it sat a narrow wooden box wedged between the wall and the floor. Different from the military crates. Smaller, personal. He opened it carefully. Inside rested several telegraph ledgers wrapped in oilcloth, and beneath them, a folded Morse code sheet covered in strange markings. Noah leaned closer immediately. "That's shorthand." Cole looked at him. "You can read it?" "A little." The boy studied the page carefully beneath lantern light. Rows of dots and dashes filled the paper, alongside handwritten notes. Noah frowned harder. "It's directions." Cole's pulse quickened. "What kind of directions?" The boy traced one line carefully with his finger. "Bridge," he swallowed. "Frozen river crossing. North rail support." Emily stared at the page. "That's outside town." Noah looked up slowly. "I think Samuel hid something there." Titan barked again sharply. Then the station above them exploded with noise. A window shattered, men shouting. And immediately afterward, gunfire. Doyle roared something indistinct overhead. Cole's combat instincts ignited instantly. Someone else had arrived, not allies. The station trembled beneath another blast of wind. Snow screamed outside now. The full blizzard had reached Black Hollow. And somewhere above them in the storm and darkness, armed men were fighting inside the telegraph station. The gunfire echoed through the floorboards like thunder trapped beneath the roof. Titan lunged toward the staircase instantly. Cole grabbed the dog's harness before he could charge upward blindly. "Easy." Another shot exploded overhead. Wood splintered somewhere near the front windows. Then came Sheriff Doyle's voice roaring through the storm. "Get out of my station, my station." The words struck Cole strangely. Not the county's station, not abandoned property, my station. The second voice answered with a curse. Then boots pounded across the floor above them. Emily clutched Noah tightly against her chest. "What's happening?" Cole listened carefully. 3 men at least. Maybe 4. One definitely Doyle. Another voice younger and angrier. The third quieter. Professional Titan growled low. The old dog's ears tracked every movement overhead. Cole made a decision fast. We move now. Emily stared at him. Into that? No, Cole said grimly. Away from it. He grabbed Samuel's journal, the Morse sheet, and the unfinished telegram, before motioning toward the far end of the cellar. There's another way out of here. How do you know? Cole pointed toward the old rail maintenance pipes disappearing beneath the station wall. Railroad men always built secondary exits. The blizzard screamed outside now, hard enough to shake loose snow through cracks overhead. Another gunshot thundered above them. Then suddenly, Titan barked sharply and jerked toward the staircase. Cole looked up just as heavy footsteps slammed toward the trapdoor overhead. Someone coming down. Fast, move, Cole snapped. They rushed deeper into the cellar as the trapdoor crashed open behind them. Flashlight beams exploded through darkness. Cole shoved Emily and Noah behind the stacked crates. Titan spun toward the stairs, snarling violently. A man descended halfway into the cellar with a rifle raised. Not Doyle, younger, heavy beard, railroad jacket. The man swept his flashlight across the room, then directly onto Titan. The dog launched instantly. The impact knocked the rifle sideways just as it fired. The shot blasted concrete beside the wall. Titan hit the man full force. The attacker screamed and fell backward onto the staircase. Cole reached them in 2 strides and slammed the rifle away across the floor. The man scrambled desperately toward the trapdoor above. Titan pinned him hard against the stairs. Then came another gunshot from upstairs, this one closer. Wood exploded near the opening. Someone above yelled, "Leave him." The injured man shoved backward wildly, kicking at Titan. The dog refused to release him. Cole grabbed Titan's harness hard. "That's enough." Titan backed off instantly, still growling. The man stumbled up the stairs, bleeding from deep bites along his coat sleeve, then disappeared into the blizzard chaos above. Seconds later, an engine roared outside the station. Tires spun wildly on snow, then faded, gone. Silence crashed down afterward except for the wind. Cole stood breathing hard. Titan limped back toward him slowly, and then Cole saw the blood. Not the attackers. Titan's. Dark blood streaked across the dog's shoulder beneath the harness. Emily gasped. "Oh God!" Cole dropped beside him immediately. The bullet had grazed deep across Titan's upper shoulder during the struggle. Not clean. Not shallow either. The old dog trembled once beneath Cole's hands but never made a sound. "Stay with me, buddy." Titan licked weakly at Cole's wrist. Cole's chest tightened painfully. Not Titan. Anything but Titan. Above them, footsteps approached the trapdoor again. Cole raised the pistol instantly. But this time Sheriff Doyle appeared alone. The old sheriff looked exhausted. Snow covered his coat and gray hair. Blood streaked one side of his face from a cut near the temple. He stared down at the cellar silently, then at Titan. "Dog hit?" Cole said nothing. Doyle slowly descended the stairs. For a moment, the entire room stood frozen beneath lantern light and storm shadows. Finally, Doyle looked toward the cracked concrete wall, toward Samuel's remains. His shoulders sagged slightly. "So you found him." Cole kept the pistol low but ready. "You knew he was down here." Doyle stared at the wall a long time before answering. "My father knew." The room fell silent. Emily looked at him in disbelief. "Sheriff Holloway was your father?" Doyle nodded once. The shame in his face looked old, heavy. "Warren Holloway Doyle," he said quietly. "Drop the Holloway name after Vietnam." Cole understood immediately. Some men spent their entire lives trying to outrun their fathers. Doyle rubbed one tired hand across his face. "My father ran freight security for the rail contractors before becoming sheriff." His voice sounded hollow now. When Samuel started asking questions about military shipments, they panicked. Emily stared toward the blood-stained wall. "They murdered him." Doyle looked down. "I was 19 years old. His jaw tightened hard. I helped pour the concrete." Noah inhaled sharply behind Emily. The confession hung inside the cellar, like another ghost finally speaking aloud. Titan whimpered softly beside Cole. The sheriff looked toward the wounded dog. "Vet clinics closed in storms," he said quietly. "But Martha Ellison still lives outside town." Used to treat ranch animals before retiring. Cole's voice hardened. Why are you helping us? Doyle laughed once bitterly. Because I've spent 56 years pretending I wasn't already damned. Wind roared outside above them. The sheriff crouched slowly near Samuel's journal lying open across the crate. My father and the contractors moved stolen military equipment through these rail lines after Vietnam started winding down. He stared toward the crates. Weapons, radios, ammo, anything they could sell off books. His face twisted slightly. Samuel found out. Cole looked toward the hidden Morse sheet Noah still held. He left directions. Doyle nodded immediately. The bridge. You know about it? I know what's buried there. The sheriff stood again heavily. Samuel hid the final shipment records beneath the Old North Bridge after he realized they were coming for him. Doyle looked toward Cole carefully. If those records still exist, they prove everything. Emily stepped forward slowly. Then why didn't you say something years ago? Doyle looked at her sadly. Because fear becomes habit if you practice it long enough. Nobody spoke after that. Only the storm. Only Titan's weakened breathing beside the crates. Finally, Noah looked down at the Morse page again. I think I can read the rest now. Cole turned toward him. The boy traced one trembling finger beneath the dots and dashes. North Rail Bridge, support beam 3. He swallowed hard. Below frozen river line. Doyle nodded grimly. That's where Samuel hid the shipment ledgers. Cole rose slowly. Then we go there. Emily stared at him like he'd lost his mind. In this storm? We may not get another chance. Titan struggled to stand immediately beside him despite the wound. Cole crouched again quickly. No, the old dog stared stubbornly back at him. Titan had followed him through firefights, mountains, explosions, and death. He wasn't staying behind now. Cole rested one hand against the dog's muzzle gently. You're bleeding. Titan pushed himself upright anyway. Sheriff Doyle looked toward the staircase above. The roads'll disappear within the hour, he warned. If we're moving, we move now. Cole glanced toward Samuel's hidden grave one final time. The old telegraph operator had waited beneath the station for more than half a century. Tonight the mountains had finally given him back his voice. Cole tightened Titan's harness carefully. The dog winced once, but remained steady. Then together, they climbed from the cellar into the storm above. Outside, the blizzard had transformed Black Hollow into a white nightmare of wind and darkness. The abandoned rail bridge waited somewhere beyond the valley, and buried beneath frozen timbers beside the river lay the final truth Samuel Vance had died trying to protect. Blizzard swallowed the world whole. Snow blasted sideways across the valley in white sheets, thick enough to erase the mountains entirely. The headlights from Doyle's sheriff truck barely reached 20 feet ahead before vanishing into swirling darkness. Cole sat rigid in the passenger seat, gripping Titan's harness gently with one hand. The old dog lay stretched across the back seat, breathing unevenly. Blood darkened the gauze around his shoulder. Every few minutes, Titan tried lifting his head to look out the windows despite the pain. Still watching, still guarding. Emily drove behind them in her ranch truck with Noah beside her, following Doyle's taillights through the storm. The abandoned North Rail Bridge sat nearly 5 miles outside Black Hollow, where the old freight line crossed the frozen Elk River. If the roads remained visible long enough to reach it, wind hammered the truck hard enough to shove it sideways across the icy road. Doyle leaned forward over the wheel. Bridge is half collapsed, he shouted over the storm. We get one shot at crossing safely. Cole nodded silently. His attention stayed on Titan. The dog's breathing worried him now. Too shallow, too slow. You hold on, buddy. Titan opened his eyes briefly at the sound of Cole's voice, then closed them again. The sight hit harder than any firefight ever had. Cole had watched men die overseas, friends, teammates, good men. But the thought of losing Titan tore through him differently, because Titan had stayed. When Claire died, when the house disappeared, when the nightmares returned, When the world narrowed down to cold parking lots and loneliness and silence, Titan stayed. The truck lurched violently as Doyle turned off the main road onto a snow-covered service path beside the abandoned tracks. The bridge emerged slowly through the storm ahead, dark, broken. Ancient railroad beams stretched across the frozen river, like the skeleton of something enormous left to rot in the wilderness. Snow swirled through the collapsed sections of railing. One support tower leaned badly sideways over the ice. Doyle parked hard near the approach. "We walk from here." The moment Cole stepped outside, the cold hit like a physical blow. The storm screamed through the valley. Emily and Noah hurried over from the second truck, bundled tightly against the wind. Noah looked terrified now, but determined too. Titan tried standing beside the truck. His legs buckled once. Cole caught him immediately. "No," Titan growled softly in frustration. The dog refused to stay behind. Cole stared into those amber eyes for one long second, then slowly nodded. "All right, together." Titan steadied himself again. The old shepherd limped beside Cole onto the bridge. Wood groaned beneath every step. Frozen river ice stretched black beneath gaps in the railroad ties far below. Wind whipped through the broken structure, hard enough to shake loose snow into the darkness. Doyle led the way with a flashlight beam, cutting through white chaos. "Support beam 3, Noah shouted over the storm, reading from Samuel's Morse page. The sheriff counted carefully. 1, 2, then stopped. There. A massive timber support rose from the riverbank beneath the bridge, partly buried beneath ice and drifting snow. Cole climbed carefully down the embankment first. Titan followed despite the injury. Emily helped Noah behind them. The frozen river groaned softly somewhere beneath the ice. Cole reached the support beam and swept his flashlight across the weathered wood. Nothing at first. Then Titan barked sharply. The dog pawed weakly at packed snow near the base of the timber. Cole dropped to one knee immediately and began digging bare-handed through ice and frozen mud. Doyle joined him silently. After several long minutes, the sheriff's fingers struck metal, a box, small, heavy. Cole pulled it free carefully from beneath the timber. An old military lockbox sealed tight with rust. The entire group stared at it in silence while snow roared around them. Doyle exhaled slowly. Samuel actually did it. Cole forced the frozen latch open with his knife. Inside rested stacks of documents wrapped carefully in oilcloth. Shipment ledgers, military transfer records, signed payment sheets, photographs, and one final envelope addressed simply. "For whoever finds this Cole," opened the envelope carefully beneath the flashlight beam. The letter inside had yellowed badly with age, but the handwriting remained steady. "If you are reading this, then Black Hollow finally stopped being afraid. My name is Samuel Vance. I worked the telegraph station from 1954 until the night they came for me. The men running freight through this valley believed small towns disappear quietly enough for crimes to vanish inside them. Maybe they were right for a long time. But places remember, rail lines remember, the mountains remember. And sometimes people remember too. If I do not survive, tell my daughter Margaret that I never abandoned her. Tell her I stayed because somebody had to witness what happened here. Some men guard borders, some guard cities, some guard things nobody else notices anymore. I guarded this station because it listened when nobody else would. The storm that night felt endless. I hear them upstairs now while writing this. Sheriff Holloway is with them. I believe they know I tried sending the telegram. If these records survive, then maybe one day somebody decent will come through Black Hollow again. Somebody willing to carry the watch forward." The letter ended there. Cole stared silently at the paper while snow blasted around them. Emily wiped tears from her face. Doyle looked away toward the river. And Margaret Vance, somewhere back in town after 56 years of waiting, would finally know her father never chose to leave her behind. Titan suddenly collapsed beside the bridge support. Cole dropped instantly beside him. "Titan." The dog's breathing had worsened badly now. blood soaked fresh through the bandages. Emily knelt quickly. He's freezing. Cole lifted Titan carefully into his arms despite the dog's size. The old shepherd rested his head weakly against Cole's shoulder. Doyle stepped closer. Martha Ellison's place is 15 minutes east if the roads hold. Cole nodded sharply. Move. The drive back through the storm blurred into fragments afterward. Snow, headlights, wind. Titan breathing weaker against the truck seat. Cole talking softly the entire way. Stories, commands, anything to keep the dog listening. You remember Coronado? Titan's ears twitched faintly. You bit the first handler they gave you. A weak tail movement. Cole swallowed hard. Yeah, I picked you anyway. By the time they reached Martha Ellison's ranch clinic, dawn had begun bleeding faint gray light into the storm clouds. The old veterinary building stood alone outside town, surrounded by snowdrifts and pine trees bending beneath ice. Martha herself opened the door before they reached it. 70 years old, maybe. Sharp eyes. Heavy ranch coat. She took one look at Titan and stepped aside instantly. Bring him in. Warmth flooded around them inside the clinic. The smell of antiseptic and cedar wood hit Cole hard after the freezing night outside. Martha worked fast, very fast. Emily helped hold supplies, while Noah stood silently near the doorway, watching everything with wide, frightened eyes. Cole never left Titan's side, not once. Hours passed. The storm slowly weakened outside. Finally, Martha removed bloody gloves and sat down heavily beside the table. The silence before she spoke nearly broke Cole apart. He's old, she said gently. Cole nodded once. I know. And he lost a lot of blood. Cole's hands tightened. Martha rested one hand softly against Titan's neck, but he's stubborn. The faintest breath escaped Cole's chest. Martha smiled tiredly. So are you. Titan lay motionless beneath blankets and warming lamps. Machines beeped softly nearby. Cole sat beside him long after everyone else fell asleep in chairs around the clinic. At some point during the quiet morning hours, Doyle approached him carrying Samuel's final letter. The old sheriff looked older now than ever before, smaller somehow. I called federal investigators, Doyle said quietly. Turned over everything. Cole looked up slowly. Doyle nodded once. It's over. No, Cole thought. Not over. Just finally spoken aloud, Doyle placed the letter gently beside him. Samuel wrote one final message on the back. Cole turned the paper carefully. There, beneath faded ink and age, sat a final line written in Morse code. Cole stared at it, then slowly translated aloud. To the next operator, keep the light in the window. The room fell silent. Beside him, Titan stirred weakly beneath the blankets. Then slowly, the old dog opened his eyes again. Cole let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Titan blinked once beneath the warming lamps, disoriented at first. The old German shepherd's breathing remained weak, but steadier now. Snowlight filtered softly through the clinic windows, while the last of the blizzard drifted across the mountains outside. Martha Ellison smiled quietly from across the room. Told you he was stubborn. Cole rested one rough hand gently against Titan's neck. The dog's tail thumped once beneath the blankets, small, weak, but alive. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Emily sat asleep in a chair near the wall, with Noah curled beneath her coat beside the wood stove. Sheriff Doyle remained near the doorway, staring out toward the snow-covered ranch fields beyond the clinic windows. Morning had arrived quietly after the longest night any of them could remember, and somehow all of them were still here. Cole looked down at Samuel Vance's final letter again resting beside Titan's bed. Keep the light in the window. Simple words, but they settled somewhere deep inside him. All his life, Cole had understood duty as movement, deployments, orders, missions, targets, protection through force. But Samuel Vance had understood something else entirely. Sometimes duty meant staying, guarding something small enough the world stopped noticing it. A station, a valley, a memory, a light in the darkness for strangers trying to find their way home. Cole stared at Titan quietly. Maybe that was why the dog had reacted to the station before any human did. Maybe old guardians recognized each other. 3 days later, federal investigators arrived in Black Hollow. The valley filled briefly with government vehicles, state police cruisers, and reporters from Missoula and Helena, asking questions nobody in town had wanted answered for half a century. Sheriff Warren Doyle surrendered his badge without resistance. Cole watched from the porch of the clinic, while Doyle stood beside a state investigator beneath falling snow. The old sheriff looked exhausted, relieved too. Before leaving, Doyle crossed the yard one final time toward Cole. Titan lay beside the porch, wrapped in blankets, recovering slowly in the pale winter sunlight. Doyle stopped near the steps. "They'll charge me," he said quietly. Cole nodded once. "You helped cover it up." Doyle looked out toward the mountains. "I spent 56 years telling myself fear was loyalty." His voice roughened slightly. Turns out it was just fear. Silence settled between them. Finally, Doyle looked down toward Titan. "That dog saved your life more than once, didn't he?" "Yeah." The sheriff nodded slowly. "My father used to say railroad men trusted dogs more than people." He managed the faintest shadow of a smile. "Probably because dogs don't lie." Then Doyle removed something from his coat pocket. An old brass deputy's whistle, darkened with age. "My father carried this the night Samuel died," he said quietly. "I don't want it anymore." Cole looked at the whistle for a long moment before taking it. Not forgiveness, not absolution, just acknowledgement. Sometimes that was all broken men could offer each other. Doyle turned and walked toward the waiting vehicles, through the falling snow, without looking back. Titan watched him go silently. Winter settled hard across Black Hollow after that. Weeks passed, then months. And slowly, almost without noticing it happening, the telegraph station began breathing again. Cole repaired the roof first, then the windows. Emily helped repaint the weathered siding, while Noah spent weekends cleaning old telegraph equipment beneath Titan's careful supervision. The hidden cellar beneath the station was sealed temporarily after Samuel Vance's remains were recovered properly by investigators. Margaret Vance attended the burial herself in early spring. The entire town came: railroad workers, ranch families, veterans. Old men who remembered hearing telegraph lines hum across the valley when they were children. Samuel Vance was finally laid to rest beneath a hillside cemetery overlooking the tracks he had guarded his entire life. Margaret stood beside Cole afterward beneath swaying pine trees while snowmelt ran softly through the mountain creeks below. "He stayed," she whispered quietly. "All these years I thought he left me." Cole looked toward the distant telegraph station in the valley. "No," he said softly. "He stayed." Margaret cried then, not loudly, just quietly. The kind of tears grief becomes after waiting half a lifetime. By summer, the station had changed completely. Not restored into something polished and modern. Something better. Alive, the front room became a small museum of Black Hollow rail history. Samuel's telegraph ledgers rested beneath glass beside photographs of railroad operators and signalmen long gone now. Noah helped set up an old ham radio table near the operator's desk, where local kids gathered on weekends to learn Morse code from Cole. Titan usually slept beside the desk during lessons, older now, slower, one shoulder permanently stiff from the gunshot wound, but still watching, always watching. Tourists began stopping occasionally, after newspaper stories spread about the forgotten telegraph station beneath the Bitterroots. Veterans came too, men who rarely talked much, men carrying invisible things inside them. Some stayed for coffee beside the stove. Some just sat quietly listening to the telegraph sounder click faintly during storms. Cole never pushed conversation. He understood silence better than most people ever would. One evening in early October, Emily stood beside him on the station porch watching sunset burn copper red across the mountains. Harvest smoke drifted softly through the valley below. Titan slept near the doorway while Noah tapped clumsy Morse practice inside. Emily smiled faintly. "You know," she said, "half this town thought you were crazy when you bought this place." Cole snorted softly. "Only half?" She laughed quietly. Then her expression softened. But they don't anymore. Cole leaned against the porch railing. The valley stretched endlessly beneath the fading light. Pine forests climbed dark along the mountain ridges, while the old rail line cut silver through the fields below, like a scar slowly healing. For the first time in years, the ache inside his chest no longer felt empty. Claire was still gone. That grief would remain forever. Afghanistan remained too. The nightmares, the ghosts, the men who never came home. But now those memories existed beside something else. Purpose. Community. A place waiting for him to wake up each morning. Emily touched his arm gently. You staying through winter? Cole looked toward Titan, sleeping beside the station door. Then toward the warm lantern light glowing through the windows. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I am. Winter returned to Black Hollow 1 year after Cole first arrived. Snow covered the mountains again. Freight trains still passed through the valley at night, their distant horns echoing softly beneath the Bitterroots exactly the way they had the night. Titan first heard the station calling to him. Only now the station windows glowed warmly against the darkness. The light stayed on every night. Late one December evening, Cole sat alone at the operator's desk while snow drifted silently outside. Titan rested beside the stove, older and grayer now but peaceful. The brass telegraph key gleamed softly beneath the lantern light. Samuel Vance's original letter rested sealed once more inside the hidden compartment behind the wall. Beside it sat another envelope, newer, addressed simply. To whoever comes next. Cole folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the compartment. Then he closed the hidden panel slowly. Titan lifted his head slightly from beside the stove. Cole smiled faintly at him. Outside, the wind moved softly across the valley. The old telegraph wires hummed faintly in the winter air. Cole rested his fingers against the brass key, then slowly tapped out a message into the quiet station. ... The rhythm carried softly through the room. Titan's ears twitched at the familiar sound. Cole looked toward the glowing station windows reflected against the snow outside. For the first time in many years, he no longer felt abandoned by the world. And somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the storms and grief and long, lonely roads that had brought him here, the watch quietly continued. If you believe some places really do wait for the right person, type "keep the light on" down in the comments. And if you've ever had a dog, a friend, or a small town help carry you through the hardest season of your life, we'd love to hear where you're watching from tonight. Subscribe if you enjoy stories about loyalty, justice, old American towns, and the people who refuse to quit when life knocks them down.